I just wanted to live with my son. But my daughter-in-law said no. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It's the kind that fills a kitchen when no one calls. The kind that echoes through an empty hallway, where family laughter used to live. I never thought I'd know that silence. Not after raising a son with all the love I had. Not after giving him everything I could when I had almost nothing left for myself. I wasn't looking for much. I didn't want to be a burden, or to meddle, or to sit in the middle of their life like some unwanted shadow. I just wanted to be near him. That's all. Just near. A quiet room in the house I helped him dream of. A chair at the table I once taught him to sit at properly. I wanted to wake up in the morning knowing that somewhere down the hall, my son was living, breathing, laughing with the family he built. That would have been enough for me. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about holding on too tight. It was about love, simple, pure, unshaken by years. But life has a cruel way of handing you truths when you're not ready to hear them. And one day, without warning, mine came in the form of a polite smile and a gentle no. A no that wasn't really said by my son. It came from her. The woman he married. The woman who, in her own way, probably felt she was doing the right thing, the kind thing. I don't hate her. That would be too easy. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting every time I remember how my son lowered his eyes, unable to meet mine, while she explained that they needed space, privacy, their own rhythm. So I packed up the hope I had quietly carried, folded it like an old sweater, and placed it back in the corner of my heart. I smiled. I said I understood. I said I was happy he had built a life of his own, and then I went home, alone. That's why I'm telling this story. Because I know there are others out there, mothers, fathers, grandparents, who've loved deeply, only to find themselves on the outside looking in. You're not selfish for wanting to be close. You're not wrong for hoping your love would still have a place in their life. And you're not alone in this ache. I'm not here to blame anyone. I'm here to share what it means to grieve quietly for something that didn't die. It just wasn't welcomed. To tell the truth with tenderness. And maybe, in that truth, help someone else feel a little less invisible. Because even when love isn't returned the way we hoped, it still deserves to be seen. I remember the first time I held him, my son. Just a few seconds old, wrapped in a hospital blanket, his tiny fists curled into himself like he wasn't ready to meet the world yet. But I was. I was ready to meet him. My heart made room for something bigger than I'd ever known. That day, I stopped living for myself. Every breath became about keeping him safe, helping him grow, loving him fiercely and quietly, without asking for anything in return. Over the years, I never counted what I gave. The sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the jobs I took, and the things I gave up. None of it felt like a price to pay. That's what motherhood is, I think. A long journey of giving, hoping that one day, when your child is grown, there's still space in their life for the person who helped build it. I wasn't dreaming of big things. I never imagined a luxurious guest room or fancy treatment. My dream was simple, a corner of their world where I could still belong. I thought, when I'm old, I'll be near my son. Maybe I'll help with the grandkids. Maybe I'll just sit in the garden while they go about their day. But I'll be there, not in the way, just present. Just home. It wasn't a dream built out of entitlement. It came from love, from years of shared laughter and hard conversations, of scraped knees and graduation days. I thought I'd earned that nearness not through obligation, but through the kind of love that only deepens with time. But I learned something I wish I didn't. Love doesn't guarantee a place. And sometimes, the more quietly you've loved, the easier it is to be forgotten when choices are made. It didn't happen overnight. That's the thing about distance. It's rarely loud. It creeps in softly, like a shadow stretching across the floor as the day fades. At first, I brushed it off, Fewer phone calls, he's busy. Shorter visits? The kids are keeping them up. No invitation for holidays? Maybe they assumed I had plans. I told myself all the right excuses so I wouldn't feel the sting. I smiled through quick conversations that used to last hours. I pretended not to notice when she, my daughter-in-law, stopped asking about me, stopped making eye contact when I'd visit. It was all subtle. She was never rude, just closed, as if her world had no room for one more soul. And my son, he tried, I think. But the trying faded too. His voice, once so full of warmth when he said, "Hi, Mom," began to carry a weight, a hesitation, as if he was walking a tightrope between two loyalties. I remember one moment, a small one, really, but it broke something in me. I offered to babysit their kids for a weekend. I had already bought new storybooks, stocked the fridge with their favorite snacks. But she smiled and said, "That's kind of you, but we already have help. Help, not family, not mom, just help." And that was that night. I sat in my quiet house with the untouched snacks and unread books, wondering how I became a guest in the life I helped create. These weren't acts of cruelty. That's what made it harder. No explosions, no harsh words, just a steady quietness that made it harder to know when I stopped being wanted. The moment is clear in my mind. I was sitting at their kitchen table, the one I had helped them pick out during their early days of marriage. The kids were napping upstairs, and there was sunlight coming through the window, painting everything. In a kind of soft calm that didn't match what I was about to hear, I had finally found the courage to ask, to say it out loud. "I've been thinking, maybe it's time I moved in, just to be close. I won't get in the way, I can help. I don't need much." For a moment, the room was still. My son looked at me, his mouth opening slightly before closing again. I saw it in his eyes, the ache, the conflict. And then she spoke. She was careful, polite, even kind in her wording. But it was clear. "I think it's important we have our own space. We're still figuring things out, raising the kids, and we want our rhythm." Our rhythm. I felt like someone had placed a wall between me and my child. A clear, cold, elegant wall I wasn't invited to step beyond. I nodded. I smiled. I said I understood. But inside, I was unraveling, not from the no, but from the fact that my son didn't say anything at all. He sat there, quiet, not cruel, just silent. And that silence was the loudest rejection I'd ever heard. I left that day with a heart that felt foreign to my own chest. I walked to my car like a ghost, and I drove home through streets that suddenly felt longer than they'd ever been. That no didn't come with a slammed door. It came with a smile. That's how rejection happens in families sometimes, gently, with grace, and without space for you to cry. But that night, I did cry, quietly, for the life I thought I'd still be part of, and the next morning, I got up and started building a new one. At first, I carried the pain like a secret. I didn't talk about it, not to friends, not to neighbors, not even to myself. I went through the motions, watering the plants, making tea, folding the same laundry I'd folded for decades. But inside, I was holding onto something heavy, and I didn't know what to do with it. That there were moments I wanted to be angry. Moments I imagined saying all the things I never said at that table, the things that would have made them squirm, the truths that would have made them feel the sting I was carrying. But I didn't, not because I was noble, but because I knew that once words are spoken in anger, they don't fade. They root themselves in people's memories. And I didn't want to be remembered by my son as the bitter mother who couldn't let go. So instead, I sat with the grief. I let it pass through me, wave by wave. Some days I cried over a cup of coffee. Some days I smiled through tears while looking at old photographs. I gave myself permission to miss the closeness we once had without hating the people who had changed the terms. Letting go didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, like sunlight returning to a cold room. I started finding little joys in the quiet. an early walk when the world was still soft, a library book that felt like an old friend, the simple pleasure of not needing to ask anyone for permission to rest, to think, to just be. I started reaching out, not to my son, not to reclaim something lost, but to new people. I joined a small community group for older women who met weekly to share stories, laugh, and sometimes cry. They didn't know everything about me, but they understood the shape of the ache I carried. One woman, a widow in her 70s, once told me, "We don't stop being mothers, but we do have to stop believing that our children owe us their life. We gave them ours so they could build their own." That stayed with me. Forgiveness came slowly. Not just for my daughter-in-law, but for my son too. I forgave him for not defending me. I forgave her for being afraid that my presence might disrupt her peace. And most of all, I forgave myself for hoping, for hurting, and for needing more than they could give. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving. It just means you stop waiting at the door that no longer opens, and you turn gently to face the life still ahead of you. Now my house is still quiet, but it no longer feels like silence screaming back at me. It's a softer kind of stillness, the kind that lets you hear your own heart again. I've learned something I wish someone had told me when I first became a mother, that loving your children also means letting them live lives that don't always include you. That sometimes love asks for space, and that space doesn't always mean absence. It just means transformation. I still see my son. We talk, we laugh. It's not what it used to be, and maybe it never will be again. But I'm learning to cherish the pieces instead of grieving the whole. And when I see my grandchildren, I love them fully, without needing to be the center. Just grateful to be part of their story, even in small ways. To anyone listening, if you felt pushed aside, forgotten, or told gently that there's no space for you where you once belonged, I want you to hear this. You are not alone, and you are not done. There's a whole life waiting for you on the other side of grief. A life where your value doesn't come from who calls you every day, but from who you are when no one's watching. A life where your love still matters, even if it looks different now. A life with new memories, new joys, new peace. You are still needed, maybe not by the people you once expected, but by the world that still needs your story, your kindness, your quiet strength. Letting go is not giving up. It's choosing to live, even when the dream changes shape. And I promise you, that choice is worth everything.